Welcome back. Hope you're all doing well. Hope your trucks are running good. Last week was sort of a short week. I planned on working through the weekend, and I just made a mental mistake, and it cost me the chance to get a load to run through the weekend and make more money. But on the other hand, I was able to come home early. So it wasn't that bad of a deal, even though I made the mistake. So I'll go through that in a minute. But last week, starting out like every week, I'm getting on the load boards and looking for loads. And like this past couple months has just been terrible. It's the worst market I've ever seen in trucking market. And right now it's a slow season anyway. So both of those things combined, and the rates are terrible. The load count's terrible. But we're still making money, and hopefully it doesn't get any worse. Got my fingers crossed. So last week was a holiday on Monday, so I didn't get out of the house until Tuesday. I got on the load boards Tuesday morning, and it wasn't looking great. I was doing everything I could to find a couple of partials going in the same direction. And with the load count being so low, it's extremely hard to do right now with my operation. Being as I'm in a moving van, a small box truck, and I have a small trailer. So everything I do has to be a partial, and getting two partials to go in the same direction is getting very difficult. But load boards weren't working out, so I went to my handy dandy notebook, and I found where I live, it's well over 2 hours to Houston. It's over 2 hours to Dallas. So usually when I'm leaving the house, I have to pick one or the other to find where to find my loads, and I'm deadheading 2 hours to get something. There's where I live out here, there's not much around. But I have my book, and I write down all my agents that I like, that are easy to work with, that don't cheat me on the rate, and that are close to the house. So I called one of those up, and I got very lucky. He had a load for me, and we negotiated a little bit, and I got a very good rate coming out of the house going to North Dakota. I do not mind going to North Dakota because I like to stay west of the Mississippi and just stay out in that area. But it's really not a good. It's a good area to get a decent rate going out. But coming back to Texas from anywhere is terrible, especially from the west. So North Dakota is a little bit different. You're not too terribly far from getting over into an area with some good, more loads and some decent rates. So I took the load up there, and I can't remember the rate it paid per mile, but it was a decent load, and I didn't have to find. Even though there weren't any partials on the board really, I didn't search around too long. I just grabbed it and went. And leaving on a Tuesday morning, my plan was to get up there, drop that load, pick up one more load that would get me over to Kansas, Minnesota, in a good area where I can find another load with some miles on it for a Friday. And so on the way up there, I did find a load that was fairly short run that would get me over to Missouri. And I didn't have hardly any deadhead. And so I booked that load, and an hour later, that agent calls me back and said, "Hey, I have a second load coming out of that same place going to Iowa." So I looked at it real quick. It was 300 miles from one to the other, had a decent rate on it. I said, "Yeah, hook me up. I'll take it too." So that, coming out of North Dakota to get two partials going on a 20-foot trailer, paying a decent rate, I jumped on both of them. But the next morning, when I was loading them all up, it dawned on me, my plan was to pick up something on Friday with some miles on it so I can make some money over the weekend. It dawned on me that I would be dropping off that first partial on Friday morning, and then deadheading a little over 300 miles to drop, or not deadheading, but driving a little over 300 miles to drop the second partial, which would put me in a bad time frame, Friday afternoon, and I was going to be about 60 miles from Kansas City. And the other bad part about that is, since I didn't know how long it was going to take to unload that first one in the morning, and I didn't know exactly how long it was going to take me to drive over to unload the second load, I didn't know exactly when I was going to be able to pick up. And if I booked a load in Kansas City, I couldn't tell them, hey, I'll be there at 4, or it might be 5. So I really put myself in a box on that one. So I ended up getting the second partial unloaded a little after 3 o'clock, and everything that was on the board at that time was junk. Everything that's left at that time on a Friday afternoon is usually junk, unless you find somebody just putting one of those emergency loads on the board. I did call call on a couple loads that were coming right back toward the house, but I was a little too late on both of them. So I ended up Friday afternoon, 500 miles from the house. So instead of getting that money load that would make me money over the weekend, I just deadheaded home. I was able to get in a couple hundred miles on Friday and drove for about 6 hours on Saturday and got home. So for the week, I did 2,530 miles. That includes from the time I left my driveway till the time I got back to my driveway, every single mile. And I grossed $2,970. And remember, this includes a little over 500 miles of deadhead and get back to the house. My fuel was $843. My fuel mileage really tanked going up to North Dakota, because the load that I had on there, it was a fairly tall load. It was 2 units, and they were about 6 feet tall a piece, and I had them tarped. So going up there, the wind was just coming at me from an angle from the front, and it was relentless all the way up there. So I probably only got about maybe 6-7 miles to the gallon all the way up there, and it killed my fuel for the week. But I netted, after all that, $1,687 for the week, and I did an oil change. So when I got home, I went down, bought some oil and a filter, and it cost me less than $60. It actually cost me 33, 40 something dollars, but I put $60 down on there because if I would have gone out and bought some lube for my grease gun, but I already had all that. So let's talk about the oil change, because I've done some videos in the past talking about my small operation now compared to my 18-wheeler when I had it. And I have lots of guys that just say, oh, that's BS, you're not comparing apples to apples and all this stuff. I did my own oil changes and almost all my maintenance and repairs on my big truck as I do now on my little truck. And I'm here to tell you, that's where the big money savings is doing things yourself. But even when you do things yourself, the difference between the little truck and the big truck is humongous. Even when doing oil change on the big truck, which would take me less than an hour to do the oil change the filters, and do the lube, it would still cost me over $200 to do that. And on the big truck, you're changing out an oil filter, you're changing out 2 fuel filters with every single oil change, and the cost of those things are the oil filter on this little truck is $8. The oil, all the oil for the little truck is $30 something. So the guys that get mad because I'm comparing the two, just realize I'm comparing them for people out there who are getting into this and wondering which would be cheaper and which would be, for the most part, for me, I like that it's simple. Everything on a gas engine especially is simple. Diesel engines are complicated. They're much harder to figure out the problems and work on. Gas engines are a little bit easier. But you have different things for different trucks, and I don't make as much money on the little truck, but I don't spend as much money on maintenance and gas and all that stuff. So it doesn't necessarily even out. I'm not saying that. If you're on a big truck, you make a lot more money, but you have a lot more risk when things break down that you can't fix, because every time you put that big truck in a shop, you can guarantee that it's going to be there a week and they're going to charge you over $2,000 no matter what it is. It just seems like that every time. But that's what I made for the week. For basically, if I didn't have to deadhead home, that little over 500 miles, that would have been three and a half days worth of work, Tuesday afternoon through Friday. So not a bad week. But like I said, I made that one mental mistake, which I'm usually, I don't make those mistakes because I do a lot of planning. But the agent, when he threw that bone to me, I had to take that. When you can make, that get two partials on the trailer picking up at the same place and delivering fairly close to each other, and both of them have a decent rate, you have to jump on that. So didn't work out as far as making more money over the weekend, but I got home earlier.